Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Jay Dirwani wishing you all a very fine Sunday morning and extending you all a very warm welcome to the first ever webinar of Rajkot IMA. Today was actually the proposed date for the first CME of new team, but because of the situation prevailing, it wasn't possible. And so we thought of coming up with a webinar, and the topic for today's webinar is the most hottest topic of today, COVID-19 myths and controversies. The disease is still new and still evolving, and the list of things which we are not aware about the disease is much longer than the list of things which we are aware about the disease. So the controversies and the myths and the confusions and the queries are bound to happen. And we also felt that such controversies and queries and questions are brewing up in the minds of our members. So this is actually an humble attempt by IMA Rajkot to clear up the controversies and queries and to bust the myths. But as I said, the disease is still new to all of us and is still in evolution phase. So the few things which might be said from this platform, though very much relevant today, may not stand the test of time and may lose their relevance in the coming time. So viewers' discretion is very much strongly recommended. Now I will invite our Joint Secretary of IMA Rajkot with the academic portfolio, Dr. Hetal Vadera, to give a brief intro about the elite panel of today's discussion, and our dynamic moderator, Dr. Paras Shah. Dr. Hetal, and thank you so very much and happy learning to all of you.
Very good morning to all of you. We have 10 panelists from different specialty. We have with us Dr. Atul Pandya sir. He is IMA National Vice President. He is member of COVID-19 Task Force at national and state level. And he is forever patron of IMA Rajkot. We do have Dr. Hiren Kothari sir. He is State Vice President of IMA. He is leading orthopedic surgeon of the city and past president of IMA Rajkot. We have Dr. Chetan Lal Seta sir. He is immediate past president of IMA Rajkot and leading skin specialist in the city. We have Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir. He is leading physician of the city and president of Association of Physicians of Rajkot. We have Dr. Jay Dirwani sir. He is current president of IMA Rajkot and leading pediatrician. We have Dr. Mayank Thakkar. He is leading physician and intensivist of Rajkot and past vice president of IMA Rajkot. He is member of COVID-19 task force of Rajkot IMA. We have Dr. Tejas Karamta. He is leading physician and intensivist of the Rajkot and past secretary of IMA. He is member of COVID-19 task force of Rajkot IMA. We have Dr. Jayesh Dobaria. He is leading chest physician and intensivist, past vice president of IMA Rajkot. We do have Dr. Akash Doshi. He is infectious disease specialist and executive committee member of IMA Rajkot. We have Dr. Sejul Antara sir. He is lab in charge of COVID-19 lab, and he is microbiologist and executive member of IMA Rajkot. We welcome you, all of you. I will invite Dr. Paras Shah to further proceeding.
Thank you very much to all of you who are on FB Live for attending this webinar. I request you all to use earphones for the audio quality. On behalf of the current team of Indian Medical Association Rajkot 2021, I welcome you all today. I am Dr. Paras D. Shah. I'll be moderating this session, COVID-19 Myths and Controversies, which actually is the brainchild of our IMA President, Dr. Jay Dirwani, and APR President, Dr. Sanjay Bhatt. The current COVID-19 pandemic has given us an opportunity to help you clarify your doubts, to educate you, and hopefully guide you for better clinical practice in this COVID-19 crisis period. To start the session, I have the most elite panelist, Dr. Atul Pandya, who is National Vice President of Indian Medical Association, who is the active task force members of National COVID-19 Task Force and Gujarat Task Force member for COVID-19 also. We would like to hear from our Atul Pandya sir the important highlights and message from your side in this current COVID-19 pandemic. Over to Dr. Atul Pandya sir.
Very humble good morning to our President, Indian Medical Association Rajkot, Dr. Jay Dirwani, Honorary Secretary Dr. Rukesh, and all my faculty members and all my viewer doctors. First of all, we all know that the virus, which is hitting us very hard throughout the globe, it has not spared any country, it has not spared any species, it has not spared any caste, it has not spared any religion, it has not spared any age. So friend, being a frontline warrior, we are much worried. Usually when two species are fighting, the strongest will win. And human have a largest brain. We the human being always fighting with the small creature known as virus since years. This is a new virus. Only thing we need to worry right now is it is very contagious, very infectious. It is spreading like hell to the world. So, being a doctor, it's our humble duty to safeguard our professional, that is a frontline warrior first, and then to protect the human species. Friends, I must congratulate our IMA team for making this, organizing this seminar. And let me assure you, who are the viewers, who are the doctor viewers, that Indian Medical Association 24/7 are always in service of you doctors, whether you get a COVID and how to prevent you from the COVID. Rajkot branch was the first branch amongst the India who have distributed more than 6,000 liters of hand disinfectant solution, who have distributed more than 15,000 PPE kit of SSMMS 90 GSM grade, that is WHO cadre grade, which was recognized by the highest authority in India. So we are the pioneer in all the aspect. So again, this is a good webinar. We will have the views of all the faculties. Thank you very much for inviting me over here. Bharat Mata ki Jai, Jai IMA.
Thank you, sir. It was indeed a pleasure to hear from you. Now, to start the session, I have Dr. Akash Doshi, who is infectious disease expert, and from him, I would like to have a brief overview of the virology and epidemiology of COVID-19. Over to Dr. Akash Doshi.
Thank you. So, as we all know, COVID-19 is the disease caused by SARS coronavirus 2. Human coronaviruses have been identified since last 60 years, approximately 1960. The disease SARS coronavirus is a beta coronavirus. It is a positive sense single-strand RNA virus, and the coronavirus disease, the two major outbreaks we have seen in the past, the SARS outbreak in 2002-2003, which affected almost 8,000 patients with mortality of 800 patients, and MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus in 2012 to 2015, which affected 2,400 patients with 800 mortality. The beta coronavirus, the structure has nucleocapsid surrounded by the envelope protein, and it has a S spike protein which attaches to the ACE2 receptor on the respiratory epithelium. The epidemiology, the cases have been almost, we can see till today morning, 30 lakh positive cases have been found all over almost 180 to 190 countries in the world, and the mortality death rate is around 2 lakh cases. The timeline of events was in December 2019. There was some unusual atypical pneumonia found in the Wuhan, and it was reported to the China National Health. It had some epidemiological linkage to the seafood market in the Hunan province of Wuhan city in China. In 7th of January, the novel coronavirus was isolated from the bronchoalveolar lavage fluid of that patient. In 11th of January, the whole genome sequencing was done. Around 30th of January, the WHO recognized it and it declared as a public health emergency crisis of international significance. And at that date, only 30th January, first case was noted in India in Kerala. 11th March, almost 1.5 months before today, the WHO declared it as a global pandemic. The virus has incubation period of almost 5 days to 14 days with an average of 5 to 6 days. And the epidemiological parameter are not the reproduction number, it around 2 to 3. It is a highly infectious virus which is spread by the respiratory droplet. And the mortality rate in world is around 3 to 4%.
Thank you, Akash Bhai. So to sum up, what I was seeing as a geometry student, the corona of sun, and it has always fascinated us. I never knew that in real sense, the corona is so scary. But yes, why I'm telling scary? Because almost 3 million people world over has been affected by the virus with more than 2 lakh expiries and 25,000 plus cases in India. I would like to have a word from Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir as an expert. What is the current status of virus outbreak in India and how do you see it? Over to Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir.
Hello everyone. Till today, there are more than 25,000 cases in India and close to 850 deaths. If we see the status of Gujarat, there are more than 3,000 patients, amongst which 2,000 plus patients are only in Ahmedabad and 133 reported deaths. Luckily in Rajkot, we have only 46 patients and no deaths. Different states have been affected differently. If we see Maharashtra, Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Delhi, and other states are affected more. Whereas northeast states are less affected, they have very less number of patients. Goa and Manipur they have already declared themselves as a corona-free states. Kerala is in a declining trend because of early measures, because Kerala people had an experience of dealing with a Nipah virus epidemic recently. So they were very careful right from the beginning. So there are no new cases, very less new cases, and probably they have not entered into a stage of community transmission before only they have broken the chain. If we compare the status of India with the rest of the world, we have less number of patients and less deaths. This can be low because of less number of tests done in India. But if we compare number of patients per million population in India and in USA and Europe and other countries, it is quite less. Even if we consider this undetected patients are 10 times more, then also it is a 2.5 lakhs patients today. Per million population, they are still less as compared to rest of the world, where the patients are in high numbers. Same is true for mortality. We have mortality of close to 850 patients till date, which is less as compared to rest of the world. Also, as there are some relieving news, since 2-3 days, ICMR has reported some decline in some fall of number of newly detected patients in last 2-3 days, which may be temporary also, but at least relieving news are there. But ICMR still predicts that, experts still predict that this disease may reach to peak in mid-May or late May. And then it will start declining. So for next 2 months, we have to be very watchful and careful. And we know that we have to live with this epidemic for a long period of time. So we are still in the state of war, and we have to be very careful while dealing with these patients.
Thank you, sir. A very personal question from my side to you. I just want to know, as my treating doctor, sir, are you worried in the current scenario or not?
Yes, I am worried. We all should be worried. We all should be careful and we all should be watchful.
So fine, a very nice message given that my treating doctor is worried, is cautious, but is confident enough that we'll collectively come out through this crisis. Thank you. Now, we have a clinical expert who is COVID-19 coordinator of Rajkot also, Dr. Mayank Thakkar, who has treated these cases so well. From Dr. Mayank Thakkar, what I would like to know is, what are the clinical features of these patients and the specific investigational characteristics you have come across in your patients? Over to Dr. Mayank Thakkar.
Good morning. If you see the frequency of symptoms, frequency-wise, the first is the fever, the second is the cough, then comes the shortness of breath. Apart from these, routine symptoms with the fever and cough is shortness of breath, sore throat, then loss of smell and sense, body ache, malaise, headache, diarrhea. These are the symptoms you can see within a COVID patient, suspected COVID patient. But if you want to differentiate little bit from the routine flu, the symptoms you cannot say frequently is sneezing and running nose. These are not the common symptoms. Once you see these symptoms, if you see the investigation of these, you frequently see neutropenia and the lymphopenia. But neutropenia is common in virus. So for differentiation, you have to see neutrophil by lymphocyte count, we can say. And if it is more than 3.5, the strong suspicious of coronavirus you can see. And more importantly, the second features you can see is repeated lymphocyte count. From the one day, if you do the second day the test, and the lymphocyte is decreasing, that is again diagnostic for coronavirus.
Okay, so I would like to ask Dr. Mayank Thakkar sir specifically whether anosmia and loss of taste sensation is COVID specific or not. I would also like to hear from you any newer signs and symptoms which are seen, and are there any specific clues to COVID? Dr. Mayank Thakkar sir.
Loss of smell and taste is there a newer symptoms we can say which is specific to coronavirus. Routine flu patient, we are not seeing these symptoms routinely, but in coronavirus we are seeing the frequency. If you say it is in near 80% patients are complaining of loss of smell and the taste. And second, in investigation specific to this, as I already told, lymphopenia is specific to coronavirus, and increasing lymphopenia. On the repeated sample, it's more frequent, and you can say it is more specific to coronavirus. Apart from this, in the indoor patient, we are seeing the D-dimer and the ferritin, which is specifically rising in such patient.
Thank you, sir. As an expert, I also request a few comments from Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir also.
As Mayank has rightly said, these all symptoms like anosmia and loss of taste sensations are very much common as compared to other flu-like illnesses. But another conspicuous sign and symptom is myalgia. Most of the patients complain that this severe myalgia they were never experienced in their past. So that is also a very important thing. Some patients are presented with some skin manifestation, maculopapular rashes in this time. These are very unusual findings, especially in children they are seeing. So this is just to add to what Mayank said.
So we have learned is fever, cough, and dyspnea are cardiac. Rhinorrhea and other nasal symptoms are not that common. Decreased SpO2 should always be taken with pinch of salt. Your patient would have come walking and maybe he would have a decreased SpO2. So we can reconfirm it next time. And yes, as sir said, severe throat pain and severe myalgia are very commonly seen. The patients are complaining that these are the worst myalgias which they have seen altogether. Thank you, Mayank Thakkar sir. Now, as another expert who has treated the patients of flu-like illness, including the COVID-19 virus patients, I request Dr. Jayesh Dobaria to enlighten us with quick answers of treatment protocols in India. And I would also like to know about few words about investigational therapies and how do he see them coming to India. Over to Dr. Jayesh Dobaria.
Thank you, Paras. Actually, whenever patients of symptomatic, particularly Dr. Mayank has rightly said, high-grade fever, myalgia, sore throat, and coughing, and few of the patients presented with unexplained hypoxia. You can just measure with the fingertip pulse oximeter. Patient has no complaint of dyspnea, but even though SpO2 is less than 90. So in this type of patient, definitely in this era, you have to suspect COVID-19. There is no need of nowadays for the traveling history of abroad or other cities, because it is, you can see so many patients from the city also. So you can suspect this type of patients and you have to send the samples, number one. For the management point of view, protocol point of view, different protocols are nowadays available from the Health Ministry of India and particularly from the AIMS also. They say they differentiate this type of patients from their vitals and their symptoms in different categories: mild, moderate, and severe. Particularly mild cases are asymptomatic. As we know, 80% of the COVID positive patients are asymptomatic and is mild variety. If they have fever, you have to just give paracetamol and supportive treatment in the form of vitamin C and adequate fluid. There is no need of food restrictions. You can give full food to this type of patients. Initial days, there are two treatment like hydroxychloroquine and chloroquines are suggested by the different organizations. But recently, yesterday on 25th of April, new guidelines, particularly from the international guidelines, they say the role of hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine is still debatable. You can use or not, you cannot use. So in mild cases, asymptomatic cases, you can just treat the patient symptomatically, number one. Number two, when you admit the patient, if patient is just suspected, you have to separate that patient from the other positive patients of the COVID-19. So in this type of patients, you can put them into the ward. Into the ward, you have to maintain the distance between two patients of at least 6 feet of two beds. Another things, you have to take vitals, particularly SpO2 and temperature pulse of these patients. If patients is of old age and other comorbidities, you have to take care of other systems like sugar, control of the sugar, and SpO2, oxygenation, temperature control, and blood pressure and urine output. So these vitals are very important. If patient is deteriorating, you can know early in this type of cases. If patient's oxygenation is low, if it is maintained 93, 92, then cutoff value is generally 92%. If less than 92%, you can start the oxygen with 5 liter of oxygen nasal cannula, and you can titrate the oxygen to keep the oxygen level more than 92. For the pregnant patients, target value is more than 94. So this way you can start the oxygen and repeatedly check the, or continuously SpO2 monitoring is very much important. Another thing is, if patient is cardiac and old age with low oxygen, definitely you have to go with the 2D echo also, because 20% of the patients having myocarditis and they have pericardial involvement also. So you have to take care of cardiac part in these patients. Another presentation is diarrhea. So if a patient has diarrhea, you cannot just treat as a routine diarrhea, but simultaneously you have to look for the other involvement of the COVID patients like cardiac and respiratory in that type of patients, along with supplementation of the fluid, because in this you have to give the fluid judiciously. You cannot just write down 3 liters fluid per day, because many a times if patients deteriorate and go into the ventilator, then you have to go with the restrictive fluid therapy. Many a times there is a decreased cardiac output, so you have to consider fluid therapy very judiciously. And another varieties is the severe variety. Patient presented with you with the severe dyspnea, cough, high-grade fever, bilateral extensive CREPS, and many times patient has past history of bronchial asthma, COPD, bronchiectasis. So in that cases, whether this deterioration is because of the acute exacerbation of COPD or asthma or because of the COVID-19, you have to proper history. If required, HRCT thorax is very important in severe varieties of patients, and from that you can judge. Generally, there is bilateral pleural effusion is not seen routinely. Only thing, if there is a decreased LV ejection fraction because of the cardiac condition or myocarditis, then it may occur. Otherwise, there are other causes we have to see for the dyspnea. So if patient is severely ill, definitely you have to admit this patient in ICU, designated ICU, not into the routine ICU, designated ICU for the COVID, and you have to maintain all the protocols. Later on, maybe that questions may be involved in this, but you have to take care of all these things, and you can prescribe hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine according to the creatine clearance. If estimated GFR is less than 10, then you can decrease the dose, half the dose of the hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine. Generally, on day 1, 800 milligram, followed by 4 to 7 days for the 400 milligram OD dose of hydroxychloroquine. Simultaneously, we have to look after of the QT prolongation. Because of this medicine, many times we are prescribing along with that azithromycin. Azithromycin also causes QT prolongation, and in cardiac patient also you have to take care of the prolonged QT. Another supportive care are vitamin C. If patient is serious, you can give injectable form also, 1.5 gram vitamin C available in the market, or along with that you can supplement with the zinc. And you have to strictly follow the surviving sepsis guidelines protocol. On the ventilator patient is that, then low tidal volume ventilatory support with control of the plateau pressure less than 30, and other supportive measures as per the guidelines of the surviving sepsis guidelines. Recently, yesterday, it was published, particularly for the COVID patients, which things you have to take care: restrictive fluid therapy, then continuous closed suction rather than open suction, and at the time of intubation also you have to take care all the things. So these are the basic protocols we have to follow in according to the grading of the, or you can say severity of the patients. Another questions very well asked, the novel therapy or investigational therapies. For the particularly this investigational therapies, as there is no specific treatment at present, it is only allowed in trials, different clinical trials, number one. And number two, particularly in moderate and severe variety. At present, already we are reading and watching many of the trials, particularly conventional plasma therapy. In that, patient is treated previously or infected with the COVID-19 and improved. So patient having antibodies in their blood. So from apheresis techniques into the particularly like platelet removal from the blood, same way antibodies against the COVID are removed from the blood by the apheresis. Around 500 to 600 mLs are aspirated, and from that doses, almost 3 patients can be given this. But this is all trial basis, and in that results are promising in few of the trials, but all trials are very small, particularly from the China, 5 patients, 8 patients. Not a single randomized trial is published till date. It is going on. In the past, in few of the particularly varicella zoster virus or other viral etiology in the past, they have tried. There are promising results. So we hope for the good results from plasma therapy. Another one is interleukin 6 blockers, or you can say tocilizumab like drugs, which are used in the dose of 400 milligram maximum and in a single dose, and after doing interleukin 6 level. Now you ask where you can go for the interleukin 6 level. It is available in Rajkot also. They sent that sample to the Mumbai in a private lab, and on the next day you get the results. But at present, because of the blockage of the airlines and other problems, it is not routinely at present possible. But you can consider tocilizumab in also as a investigational or trial basis. So these are 2 good therapies. And another one is corticosteroids. Particularly corticosteroids treatment is controversial, but in few of the trials, particularly patient is in shock, then you can use low dose corticosteroids for short duration of 4 to 5 days only. So I think these are the promising trials are going on, and we hope good results in the future.
थैंक यू जयेश सर. वो नब्ज कभी न थमने दी जिस नब्ज को हमने थाम लिया, बीमार था वो किस धर्म का था ना हमने कभी ये भेद किया. We are so proud of Rajkot, PDU Medical College Rajkot, Synergy Hospital, Giriraj Hospital, and Christ Hospital. They have treated our patients so well, and Rajkot stand apart, touch wood, in one thing, that we still don't have any mortality because of COVID-19 patients. So this is all because of tireless efforts of all those treating doctors, IMA Rajkot's 10 stall because of all of you, and we are thankful to all of you for this. So now, something about, as Dr. Dubaria has told about, and which is very well discussed, we are almost all going to start our practices in the sooner time also. What should be done? So the basic question which has come to all our minds, we have discussed lots on our WhatsApp, is about hydroxychloroquine prophylaxis. My question to Dr. Akash Doshi is, what some salient points regarding hydroxychloroquine prophylaxis? Over to Dr. Akash Doshi.
As Jayesh rightly said, that the evidence for this disease is changing every day. Hydroxychloroquine is a weak base. It is thought to have in vitro activity against SARS coronavirus in the past outbreak. And in some studies in China and France, it had some therapeutic role in the viral clearance. It has effect on the lysosome, it acidifies the lysosome, and it has effect on ACE2 receptor, and it hampers the viral replication. The hydroxychloroquine has been specifically advised by ICMR risk-benefit consideration in an exceptional situation to high-risk individuals. So the high-risk individuals, they involve the patients, the medical staff treating COVID patients in the COVID ICU, they're treating isolation ward COVID, they are working in the emergency department, or they are working in the triage area of the patients. These healthcare workers are exposed to possible suspect COVID patients. So they should be taken, but it has to be discussed. The dose has been said like 400 milligram twice a day on day 1, and then 7 weeks for healthcare workers, and 3 weeks for the asymptomatic contacts of the laboratory confirmed patients. The newer studies which has come just 1 or 2 days back, it has a therapeutic role. The questions are arising of hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin in the therapeutic role. But right now, the current situation today is we have to discuss it with the healthcare workers. We have to take an informed consent. We have to have a baseline ECG with QTC less than 450. And we have to have some restrictions, like less than 15 years of age, if the patient has retinopathy, if the patient has G6PD deficiency, if the patient has some skin disorders, psoriasis. Also, if the patient or the healthcare worker is more than 50 years of age and he's having any chronic cardiac disease like hypertension, then we have to be a little bit judgmental while prescribing this. And also we have to look for side effects. It has hypoglycemic side effects, so we have to take care, and we also have to look for interactions. So right now I will suggest that only high-risk healthcare workers who are going to possibly exposed to suspect patients, and in the age group of 15 years to 50 years, maybe they can be given the prophylaxis. But there are newer and newer trials going on. The result may come in 2-3 weeks in UK and US with a large number of healthcare workers, 10,000, 3,000, and we hopefully will get a conclusive evidence from these trials.
Yes, Akash bhai, one more point. Whether their family members should be given or not.
No, family members should not be given.
Fine, so giving hydroxychloroquine prophylaxis should be to the most appropriate healthcare workers, not needed to be given to all, not needed to be given to the family members of the doctors, treating doctors. So fine, now we have talked a lot about the clinical features, we have talked a lot about the prophylaxis and all. Now we would like to know about infection control measures. There are questions which have been coming that what should we do, how we should be checking the patients in OPD and all. And for this, I have Dr. Mayank Thakkar, who will be discussing about infection control measures, especially what precautions one should take in OPD and triage area, and highlight the minimum precautions one has to take while seeing the OPD patients, so that the doctor and the staff does not have to be quarantined also. Over to Dr. Mayank Thakkar.
Thank you, Varas. I know most of you want to know this. This is the most important question for the medical and paramedical staff. We will start with the triage. I know small hospital cannot establish a triage, but I want to describe how you can do this. First, in a triage, that should be established at the entrance of the hospital. Small hospital can establish this in the parking area. અત્યારે મંડપવાળા બધા free છે. You can ask any of your known કે એક મંડપ નાખી અને બારે you can establish this triage area outside your hospital in a parking area. You have to appoint one staff in a triage area. You can appoint a nurse or a medical officer who can do this. In a triage area, you have to measure temperature, SpO2 probe, and the history. These three things you require. In a history, you can use COVID risk score. Once you take the temperature, COVID risk score, and SpO2, and if your staff feel that patient can be suspected for a COVID, you can directly ask your staff to tell them they can go to the COVID testing center. Sometime it happen, we are facing this, patient want to show the doctor. In such case, we have asked our staff to call the intercom. They call us, and we are discussing with the patient, explaining them the need of the testing, and we are referring them. If he is not understanding, you can call this patient inside with a due precaution. The precautions staff has to take who sit in the triage area, they have to wear the gloves, N95 mask, and the face shield. These three things require. If he is not able to wear the gloves, then he can use frequent hand hygiene with an sterilium. This is the three things the staff require at the triage area. There is no need of PPE kit in the triage area, the staff sitting in the triage area. Once you have triaged the patient and you are allowing the screened patient inside the OPD, in the OPD, your reception staff, your ward boy, they can use a triple layer mask. There is no need of N95 mask for these people. And when you are sitting in the OPD, you are seeing the patient. Again, if the triage patient is coming, which are less likely to be a suspected COVID, you can use triple layer mask or N95 mask and gloves. These are the requirement according to the guideline. But if you are not able to establish in a triage area, then all staff has to wear N95 mask, gloves. These two requirement is there, but there is no requirement of PPE kit. Apart from these precautions, if in any point of time your exposure is increasing more than 15 minutes and triaging is not done, in such condition you have to wear a PPE kit. So if you want to avoid the quarantine, keep in a 1 meter distance and avoid more than 15 minutes of duration of interaction. In such case, you will not be quarantined, and if you are using a triple layer mask or N95 mask and you are wearing the gloves, these are the requirement for an OPD practice and a triage and without triage OPD practice.
Thank you, sir. A question which was very important. Probably 50% of our doctors are seeing these lectures to hear this question around. So what minimum things he has told is, for a person like me who doesn't have a triage area, I should consider my OPD as a triage OPD. I should wear a N95 mask. We should wear gloves. If possible, eye shield, something like that. That should be the basic bare minimum requirement, so that we can avoid the exposure to our own self and even the quarantine by the officials can be prevented. Now, my question to Dr. Jayesh Dobaria, sir, kindly highlight the precautions in IPD patients. Over to Dr. Jayesh Dobaria, sir.
Dr. Mayank has already explained about the OPDs. So now once patient is not suspected of the COVID, but patients are of other speciality, cardiac patient, gastro patient, operative patients, and even though sometimes there has some signs and symptoms of respiratory without fever and no suspicions of the COVID. So different varieties of the patients are into the indoor department. First of all, two things: what precautions for the doctors and for the nursing staffs. Number one, for that, every doctor and nursing staff has separate clothes for the hospital. Once they came to the hospital, they changed the clothes. It should be half-sleeved. There should be no rings. There should be no watch, no other ornaments for the nursing staff also. Number one. Number two, after changing these clothes, they have to use triple layer face mask. No need of N95 mask into the indoor patients if there is no COVID patients are suspected or there. Sometimes, because of the specificity and sensitivity of the PCR test of COVID, some cases you are highly suspected, even though COVID is negative, this may be positive. In that cases, second time test, if possible, should be done. If it is not done and patients come to you and you have indoor that patients, in that cases, you have to separate that patient in single room. It should not be into the general ward, this type of cases. Another important things, every staff has to use frequent hand hygiene, number one. There should be some bell-like or central announcing system every half an hour that mention ke every persons in the hospital, please wash their hands or use sanitizer, or you can use just a simple bell for the reminder. So every person in the hospital is using this. Another thing is using the mask, gloves, and if particularly some procedures into the ward that aerosol is generated, like nebulizer. So it is better to shift from nebulizer to the spacer with multi-door inhaler into the ward also. This is very good practice changing things we should go. Another things, some patients are seen by only that designated staff. If you have 20 patients, so you can make a bunch of 5, 5, 5, 5. 5 patients are seen by specific nurse only. No other nurse go to that patient. This type of protocol should be done into the indoor practices. Now from the side of the patients and relative, every patient into the indoor patient should wear face mask. Simple face mask should be wear to the each and every indoor patient. And a limited entry of the relatives is also very important. You can restrict the relatives entry into the indoor areas, only one relatives, and that is also the same relatives. Rather than changing every 2 hours, it is not allowed for the visitors policy or relatives policy. I think these basic things we should follow.
So thank you, Dobaria sir. Now, my question to Dr. Tejas Karamta, who is an infectious disease expert and critical care expert also. Dr. Tejas Karamta, what we would like to know from you is, what measures one has to take for infection control in ICU patients? In ICU patients, non-COVID hospital. Over to Dr. Tejas Karamta.
Good morning, everybody. The question is infection control in non-COVID hospital. First of all, as Dr. Mayank and Dr. Jayesh told, we have to identify the patient from the triage area, COVID versus non-COVID, or till the report comes, all patients should be treated as COVID-19 patient. Then they come to the specific area in ICU or emergency room where all suspected patients we are keeping with distance of at least 1 meter. 1 meter bed, there should be a distance of at least 1 meter between 2 bed. Once patient come in ICU in non-COVID area, and it is confirmed that the patient is non-COVID, then there is no need of PPE kit in ICU. Moreover, for COVID-19 ICU, there is government specific guideline for isolations with HEPA filter, with negative pressure rooms. But in all cases, in Indian healthcare scenario, this is not possible. In such cases, we have to work with split ICU with slightly doors or that windows open with exhaust fan, with fan we can work with. Moreover, in case of COVID-19 patient ICU, if there should be a entry and exit door should be separate, there should be a donning and doffing area should be separate. Moreover, in case of infection control, each and every nursing staff in COVID-19 ICU should be wear PPE kit. Moreover, there should be some aerosol generating procedure in the ICU. These are incubation, nebulization, rise tube insertion, upper GI scopy, bronchoscopy. These are the procedures which are aerosol generation procedure. In, s- in, generate, in running this procedure, we should separate our healthcare worker in high risk, moderate risk, and medium risk exposure. The high risk and moderate risk healthcare exposure should be wear complete PPE kit, and in case of incubation, we should avoid aerosol exposure as far as possible with sedations and even muscle relaxant also like succinylcholine. Moreover, we should avoid nebulization as far as possible. We should not nebulize the patient as Dr. Jayesh Dobaya already told. Moreover, O2, simple nasal plunge and O2 mask and even venturi mask should be avoided. We should use either high flow nasal cannula or NIV. It should not be used more than 1 or 2 hours. If we fail to maintain the saturation, we have to incubate the patient with standard all aerosol generating precautions guideline, and we have to incubate the patient. During incubate or aerosol generating procedures, we should use minimum manpower with maximum expertise. We should use minimum manpower with maximum expertise. So procedure should not be failed or procedure should not be prolonged. Moreover, after doing procedure, the doping or after doing procedure or after completion of duty hours, the doping should be important. We should, after doping, we should decontaminate our all PPE kit, our instrument, everything, sharp lasers, sharp instrument, whatever we use before disposed to the biomedical waste. Biomedical waste entry should be separate, exit should be separate. The disinfectant procedures for the bed, for instrument, are every 6 hourly with sodium hypochlorite will be put light by Dr. Chetan Lalseta in next some questions. But there should be a strict disinfectant protocol. Moreover, in ICU, whenever patient are treated or nursing, we should not put our hand to our face, our other body surface area. As far as possible, we have to avoid the touching of our hand to other area. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tejas. It was indeed the most important lesson we have learned from you. Now we have the special comments and special questions from the surgeons and the surgical allied branches. We have Dr. Hiren Kothari, sir, who is Vice President of Gujarat State IMA and the expert in this. Dr. Hiren Kothari, sir, I would like to know from you what measures one has to take in the operation theater while operating the patients.
A very good question, Paras. Before I start anything, I would like to just know that whatever number of asymptomatic or carrier patient that we are expecting is much more than we can believe. So before thinking of any surgery, we should ask a question to ourselves, whether this surgery which we are going to operate is a life-saving or a limb-saving. Because in the midst of this panelist, I am the only surgeon who is there to let you know that in case the surgery is going to help patient saving his life or limb. Because surgery is a altogether different ball game. Because in healthcare professionals, physicians and surgeons are two different species.
surgeons have altogether different sets of problem, because as Dr. Tejas has mentioned, almost all procedures that you perform in the operation theaters are in some way aerosol generating procedures. Mind it, you cannot save from that. First, to avoid intubation is the important thing. If at all you can have an emergency, try to do it under local or regional anesthesia. That is number one. Because it requires a very special setup to perform COVID patients or COVID carriers. Because as Mayank has said, it is easy to create a separate area for outdoor patients. But for operation theater, you need to have a separate dedicated operation theater to operate all those patients till this pandemic is on. So far as the elective surgeries are concerned, it should be avoided till further notification. And now the question is precautions. As I said, use the regional anesthesia. The coterie, a very important question that people often ask is whether it should be used or not. Any amount of coterie that you use is again a AGP, that is aerosol generating procedures. So minimize the use of coterie, minimize the lavage, minimize the instruments that use reamers, drills, saw or anything. Over and above, whenever you do a surgery, do the quickest procedure that is required. Now the question is of PPEs. No surgery should be done without adequate amount of PPEs for the entire staff who is ready and available in the operation theater. So that is how the amount of cytokine storms that we are exposing to the patients as well as the operating and OR personnel is much, much higher than we can anticipate. Because in ICCU, the procedures are different, but in surgery, the things are different, because when you are operating a patient, the operation theater's air is again recirculated. So first things, along with using all PPEs, try to see that your operation theater is negative pressure, so there is no positive pressure inside the operation theater. Of course, with due risk of infection, you have to take the best judgment whether you need a real surgery with negative pressure off. So this is how, not only during the surgeries, but even after the surgeries, you require a diligent disinfecting the entire operation theater so that you do not transmit the infection of a carrier patient to another patient or operation theater personnel.
Thank you, sir. So we had elaborate idea on infection control measures. I would request Dr. Sanjay Bhatt, sir, to sum up the entire issue of infection control. Dr. Sanjay Bhatt.
Our expert, Dr. Fusi, leading an ID specialist in USA and advisor to Donald Trump, has correctly said there is no hurry in pandemic. Even if there's a patient in your emergency room, wear your PPEs first and then only attend the patient. That is the first and foremost message. Regarding surgeries, you need to decide whether the surgeries are high risk or low risk. If they are low risk surgeries where there is less likelihood of general anesthesia, aerosolization, production procedures, less use of cauteries, those surgeries can be planned. Other surgeries can be deferred, if at all, at least for 3 months from now, whatever is possible. That is one. Second thing, as Tejas has also said, only experts should intubate the patient so that minimum time is wasted in procedure, and there is no failure of procedure. Another big question is air conditioners that we are going to discuss later in this talk, so we will discuss it at that time. But main thing is there is no hurry. Even if patient is very serious, please wear your PPE first and then only attend the patients, irrespective of his condition. Protect yourself first.
Thank you, sir. There were a lot of questions from the general practitioner group also that what precaution they should take. I think they should consider themselves as a part of screening OPD and all the precautions which Dr. Mayank Thakkar had said to wear in the screening OPD should be followed. I think this clarifies the question. Now, I have a very special person, the lab in charge, of the COVID-19 testing in Rajkot and our own IMA Rajkot member, Dr. Sejul Antala. Dr. Sejul Antala, sir, can you brief us about the investigations and the PCR tests and something about the antibody tests also? Dr. Sejul Antala, over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Once the patient is suspected of an COVID, we have to do a test, whether he is a COVID positive or COVID negative. Presently, we have a gold standard test which is available is an PCR test, which is commonly known as an RT-PCR test. RT-PCR means real-time polymerase chain reaction. For this test, we preferred the samples, which is either of mainly two samples. One is nasal or nasopharyngeal swab, which is collected together in a single viral transport medium and transported to the lab. Or we can also collect a sample of the bronchoalveolar lavage. Sensitivity of the bronchoalveolar lavage specimen is relatively better than the nasopharyngeal and nasal swabs. But for a mild symptomatic or asymptomatic patient, we have to collect the nasal and nasopharyngeal swabs. PCR is a gold standard test which is currently available, so we have to solely rely on this test only. In our lab, once we are receiving the sample, I will give you a brief idea how we are proceeding for the test. In our lab, we are adding an lysis buffer which will kill the virus which is present in the specimen. So it will be no more hazardous for the lab persons. For this, adding a lysis buffer, whoever is working in the lab is using all infection control protocol. He deals with the specimen by wearing a full PPE, and we have to perform this test by in the biosafety cabinet where the negative pressure is maintained. In another step, we are separating the RNAs which is present in the specimen, which includes the human RNA or any RNA which are present in the specimen can be separated out in our next step. And then we are preparing a primer and probes to detect a specific sequence of an COVID-19 for diagnosis whether the specimen has contained a coronavirus or not. In the fourth step, we are adding the master mix, or which is a reagent that we have prepared for detection of a specific RNA sequence with the separated RNA from the specimen. And in the real-time PCR machine, after processing in the real-time PCR machine, we can able to tell whether the sample is positive or whether it is contains a coronavirus or it is a negative. Another test which is commonly and presently in highlight is a rapid antibody test. Rapid antibody test is protocol has been designed by the ICMR that this test can be done if the patient is symptomatic for more than 7 days. And in such patient, rapid antibody test can be done either from the serum or plasma which is extracted or removed from the EDTA sample, or direct finger prick test can also be done from the whole blood. But so far, still we are waiting for an thorough guidelines of an ICMR before we proceed for this test. And this rapid antibody test can mainly be used particularly in the hotspot area where there are more cases or more cases concentration is there in particular area, or such test can be used for the surveillance in a community. But still we have to wait for a detailed ICMR guidelines regarding this. But till then, we have to rely on the RT-PCR, which is a gold standard method. Thank you.
Thank you, Sejul sir. Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir.
As Dr. Sejul has told, sensitivity of test is 70% and 1/3 of the patients can be missed. It can be, sensitivity can be improved by taking multiple samples, I think, which we are taking. Best technology is LAMP technology, but which is only followed in 2-3 centers of US. So it is the only test we are left with to diagnose COVID-19. viral shedding occur maximum on the first day of symptom, and it decreases thereafter till 8th day. So if we test negative and if we do a repeat test, chances of that repeat test becoming positive are less and less as the time passes. Only if it will become positive if there is a sampling error, which is not the case routinely because experts are taking the sample. So if you want to repeat test should be done in a day or two. Then only chances of picking a positive test which was negative earlier are higher. That we have to take care very much.
Thank you, sir. From Dr. Akash Doshi, I would like to know about importance of CBC, D-dimer, and ferritin testing in these patients.
As we see that in infectious disease, the complete blood count makes a very important role in diagnosis. So as we see, the most common findings in the laboratory parameters in these patients are lymphopenia, leukopenia, increased LDH, and increased inflammatory markers like ESR, CRP, ferritin. Some mention regarding the lymphocyte count. In a study carried out in New York in almost 400 patients, the absolute lymphocyte count was less than 1500 in almost 90% of patients. Another group in China have revised a term called neutrophil to leukocyte ratio in patients of more than 50 years of age and less than 50 years of age. In less than 50 years of age, if the NLR, neutrophil leukocyte ratio, is less than 3.13, with this 3.13, the sensitivity of this NLR was around 80% and specificity was 70% to project the prognosis and the course of disease. So in less than 50 years of age, if the NLR is less than 3.13, we can advise the patients to have home quarantine or home isolation. If the NLR is more than 3.13, we have to admit the patients in isolation ward. Now for patients more than 50 years of age, if the NLR is less than 3.13, we have to admit them in isolation ward with respiratory monitoring, SpO2 monitoring. And if the NLR is more than 3.13, we have to straight away admit the patient in intensive care. Now something regarding ferritin and D-dimer. Ferritin is an inflammatory marker, so it is supposed to be high in this disease progressively. And D-dimer is just as we see in DIC, the coagulopathy, there is increased level of D-dimer, but the coagulopathy DIC of COVID is little bit different from the bacterial or trauma ARDS because the decrease in the APTT is not in comparison with the increase in PT. So there is less increase in APTT, and also the thrombocytopenia is mild in COVID, approximately around 1 lakh of platelets. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akash Doshi. I would like to hear from Dr. Mayank Thakkar a quick highlight in brief about management in COVID patients who are admitted in ICU. A very brief and quick overview, Mayank Thakkar, sir.
Patient of COVID patient in ICU is little bit discussed with Dr. Jayas, is already told, and Dr. Tejas. Again, I want to highlight few points of them. In ICU, again you have to watch the SpO2, and the conservative management is the thing. Conservative fluid management, oxygen therapy. The tablets are hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, which still are plus minus. It is not strong guideline you have to use like this. Apart from this, if patient is worsening, the newer therapy coming is awake proning. If conservative management and tablets, patient is not improving with a conservative vitamin C therapy and supportive all the therapies and oxygen therapies, if SpO2 is falling, ask the patient to prone. This is called awake proning with oxygen therapy. And many patients are improving with this. If even after this patient is not improving, we are giving a high flow oxygen therapy or an NIV. But if your ICU is negative pressure, then use NIV, or use a newer NIV which has an expiratory circuit, and you have to apply HME filter at the expiratory circuit. If you don't have such NIV or negative pressure, then better to intubate the patient. Along with this, few things coming is at the moderate to severe level is coagulation therapy. You have to watch for D-dimer, and considering the seriousness, conservatively use the anticoagulant. And as Jayesh told, steroid is a therapy that should be used for a short period of time and in a medium dose, 1 milligram per kg. And after ruling out the co-infection with the bacteria or other infection, or you see the side effect, after all the parameters check, you can give this. So in newer therapy, I can say, apart from routine protocol which you are doing in ICU is awake proning, coagulation therapy, and the moderate use of steroid. These are the three things. Otherwise, all the routine things you have to do in the ICU.
Thank you, Mayank sir. That was indeed highlighting and enlightening for all of us. This was something about the management protocols, something out of box which I would like to ask to Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir. What are the lessons which we have learned from different countries all over the world and Kerala? Can you like to highlight, Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir?
So we had some lessons to learn. Those countries who have tested very high, they are in a good shape. Suppose Iceland, Germany, Japan, South Korea, they have tested in a very high number, isolated the people, quarantined the people, and they are getting good results of it. They have less number of patients, they have less mortality. USA, Italy, France, Russia, they have also tested very high in numbers, but the results are different. This is because of the late installment of public health measures. If you see Japan and Italy, both are on the same latitude, but still the mortality is different in both the countries. Both have almost equal elderly population. Still the mortality is very high in Italy as compared to Japan, because Japan had an experience of treating SARS-CoV-1, and this experience helped Japan a lot because they were very ready to keep this challenge, and they isolated the patient, tested very high. So in this high resourceful countries, they have managed it quite well. In Italy, the first patient was diagnosed was an Italian, and COVID was diagnosed while investigating him for pneumonia. And after that, the epidemiological link was studied, and it was found that many Chinese travelers and Chinese actually spread the infection. But by that time, it was too late, and community transmission was already taken place. So these are the lessons to be learned of public health measure that we have done it quite early, and we are also seeing the results also. If you see the Finland model, Finland, they have done a simple thing. Each and every individual was wearing a simple cloth mask, and the transmission was reduced to a significant extent. Same thing is done by our own state, Kerala. Right from the beginning, because the first ever case was noted from Wuhan was in Kerala, and they have started extensive testing, extensive contact tracing and isolation right from beginning. So probably the state did not enter into a state of community transmission. This was the best part of it. USA, many things have happened, large number of patients, huge mortality for reasons we do not know, only Donald Trump can say, but there are many reasons. Africa and South America are experiencing a rise now. They are behind us, and now they are seeing more and more number of patients. Another myth was whether hot weather can protect us or not. And the answer is no. A virus is killed only if the temperature is more than 56 degrees Celsius. So in India, we have to learn lessons from all these countries and our own state, Kerala. And recently, the state government of Gujarat is following the Kerala model, and number of tests have increased and number of patients have also increased, but we are doing more contact tracing, more isolation, more quarantine, and I think it should help to us.
Thank you, Bhatt sir. So this was something about the specific points which needed a broader highlight. However, we all know that COVID-19 is a newborn baby, and we all have many queries and controversies amongst our own self. The elite panel can always throw some highlights, but we need to take it with our own wisdom. I have Dr. Chetan Lalseta, who had been the president of IMA Rajkot in this time of crisis. There are physicians and pediatricians who are knowing that what should we do whenever we are seeing a patient of suspected COVID-19 or something. But there are many other group of doctors in our own society which might not be aware about the detailed thing. So what I would like to know from Dr. Chetan Lalseta is what a doctor should do when he sees a patient who is a suspected case of COVID-19.
Good morning. As we all know that the signs and symptoms of this COVID-19 are similar to any other flu-like disease. So first and foremost thing, we should make ourselves clear with the classical signs and symptoms of COVID. Do not over-exaggerate the symptoms. At the same time, do not underestimate also. There are new symptoms also which are appearing. So if you suspect that this could be COVID positive patient, first and foremost thing, you analyze the patient, you take detailed history, travel history, history of any contactants, and then suspect them for COVID testing. Now, regarding the COVID testing, it is available with the government setup at present. In future, we may have other options also. So I would suggest that trace the patient, test the patient, and track the patient. So you take the detailed contact number of the patient, if possible, even Aadhaar card details, because many a times when we suspect the patient to be COVID, they will get frightened. And many a times they may not reach to the center. You have to send them to the designated lab only and designated hospitals only. So during that transportation, if they are missed, they can be potential carrier and they can spread the infection. So trace the patient, then test the patient. Reassure with the authorities. Every nodal officer is being there to look after those patients. So contact the nodal officer, give them the patient details, give them the Aadhaar card details. So if patient is missed, they can track them and again test them. After testing, reassure yourself that the patient was positive or negative. And even if it is negative, keep tracking them for at least 12 to 14 days.
So thank you, Chetan Lal Setha sir. The very clear message he has given. Whenever you suspect a patient of COVID-19 positive, refer it to super speciality COVID special hospital at PDU Medical College Rajkot or Christ Hospital. Sir, we would like to know whether we need to inform any government officials or not.
Yes, we have to inform the nodal officer, and at the same time, we should also inform DDO or DHO for the same, so they can take appropriate precautions in the area from which this patient is being coming.
Yes, so you need to inform the DDO so that the patients can be traced in case they are not reaching the designated hospitals. So now my question to Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir is, kindly clarify your views on transmission, whether it's droplet transmission or airborne transmission, whether any vertical transmission is possible or not, whether fecal-oral route is the mode of transmission, and the transmission rate infectivity. Dr. Sanjay Bhatt, sir.
Transmission is largely because of droplets and by fomites. So close contact can only transmit the infection. Airborne transmission is not very common. It is common only where there is aerosol generation, especially in the hospitals, in ICUs, in OTs, during coughing and during sneezing. So we have to, if we keep a distance of more than 1 meter and the contact time is less than 15 minutes, there are less chances of infection. So in general, in population, airborne transmission is not common. There are reports of asymptomatic patient transmitting infection. This is probably through small aerosols which are generated during talking. These droplets are transmitted and cause infection in other patients. So this is the key feature, that droplet transmission is the only main way. Fecal-oral transmission is possible because virus is excreted in the feces for 28 days, but it is not, it plays a very minor role in the transmission of the disease, and only hand hygienes are enough to prevent this transmission. Vertical transmission, by and large, it is not known. Why? Because there is no viremia. The virus or the antigen is not in much amount in the blood, so it does not cross placenta. Neither it is found in the amniotic fluid. Even in breast milk, the virus is not secreted. So there is no placental transfer. So another thing is that pregnant patients are not more susceptible to COVID. Neither COVID causes more virulent disease in pregnant females. So in pregnancy with COVID is as non-pregnant status. That goes is. Another thing, I think I've covered everything.
Sir, any specific point on transmission rate infectivity and infectivity from first person to second person to third person?
Infectivity, if infected person enters a room or a susceptible population, he is likely to infect 2 to 3 persons. That is around 2 to 3 persons. But it can be more in epidemic up to 6 to 8. When this infectivity comes to less than 1, epidemic usually ends. So usually it is 2 to 3. And in household context, usually an infected individual infects 10 to 15% of the household context. Not all, but 10 to 15% of close contacts are usually affected.
Thank you, sir. I would like to know from our IMA President, Dr. Jay Darwani, sir, is heat going to play a pivotal role in limiting the transmission of virus?
Thank you, Paras. Virus is, after all, a protein, RNA protein or DNA protein, and may or may not be covered by a lipid membrane. So any protein which gets exposed to the heat of more than 41 degrees centigrade for more than 30 minutes gets denatured. It gets instantly killed at the 56 degree, as Sanjay told. But if the virus is exposed to 41 degrees centigrade for more than 30 minutes, it is denatured. So there is some logic behind this belief that we are having, that the summer heat may protect us from the coronavirus. But then we have to dig deep into that, because 41 degrees centigrade or more of the temperature in the summer heat is going to only in outdoors. We are not having that much temperature in indoors only. And so virus can very well survive in our homes, in our premises, in our offices. And even outside, if there is an infected person and standing close to a uninfected person, and with the cough and the sneezing, the virus shedding occurs, and that is instantaneously inhaled by the non-infected person. So the virus does not have the chance to expose to the 41 degrees centigrade outside for more than 30 minutes. So the temperature can still, the temperature does not play much of the role in the infection rate.
Thank you, Dhirwani sir. Dr. Jayesh Dobaria will also like to throw some highlight on the same issue.
સરે બહુ સાચું કીધું. બધાને કહું છું કે ટેમ્પરેચર વધે, હ્યુમિડિટી વધે, એમ આનું કંટ્રોલ આવે છે. 2 દિવસ પહેલાં ડોનાલ્ડ ટ્રમ્પે પણ એના ભાષણમાં કીધેલું હતું. તો મેસેજ ફ્રોમ ધેટ પાર્ટ ટુ અસ ઇઝ ધેટ કે આપણા ક્લિનિક અથવા તો જે એક્ઝામિનેશન રૂમ છે એમાં એસી બંધ રાખો, બારી ખુલ્લી રાખો. બીજું, જે પણ સેન્ટ્રલાઇઝ હોસ્પિટલો છે એર કન્ડિશનવાળી, એમાં જ્યાં જ્યાં એસી બંધ થઈ શકતા હોય એસી બંધ રાખો, એન્ડ ઓપન ધ વિન્ડોઝ. સો યુ face little bit heat. Room temperature may be 35, 37, but there is more chances of control or inter-hospital spread of the disease are decreased.
So, thank you, sir. Now, there is something about PPE which all of us would like to know. I have Dr. Tejas Karamta, who had worked hard on this issue since last 1 month, and we have all seen the efforts of him. So, Dr. Tejas Karamta, I would like to have a very quick overview from you. What do you include in PPE? Is quality control important? And what should be the material of PPE? Because we should not have a pseudo sense of security while we are wearing a PPE.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paras. Again, છેલ્લા 1 મહિનાથી હું ડૉક્ટર મયંક ઠક્કર સાહેબ અને ડૉક્ટર ચેતન લાલસેટા સાહેબ, how to make our paramedical staff and our doctors went safe in this COVID-19 pandemic scenario ની પાછળ પડેલા હતા. PPE everywhere PPE kit થતું હતું. તો what is PPE kit, how it will be work, how it be manufactured, ખૂબ જ એનું પેલું મહેનત કરી અને તમને એક પોઈન્ટ કહેવા માગું છું. PPE કીટ માટેને સેન્ટ્રલ ગવર્મેન્ટની અને સેન્ટ્રલ હેલ્થકેર મિનિસ્ટ્રીની ગાઈડલાઇન છે. સેન્ટ્રલ ટેક્સટાઇલ મિનિસ્ટ્રીની ગાઈડલાઇન પ્રમાણે સેન્ટ્રલ ગવર્મેન્ટે DRDO લેબ એન્ડ સિટ્રા લેબ, સાઉથ ઇન્ડિયન ટેક્સટાઇલ એસોસિએશનની લેબને આના માટે નોમિનેટ કરેલી છે. આ 2 લેબ નોમિનેટેડ ટેક્સટાઇલ હેલ્થકેર મેન્યુફેક્ચરર હોય એ લોકો જ PPE કીટનું હેલ્થકેર ગુડ્સ સપ્લાય કરી શકે છે, મેન્યુફેક્ચર કરી શકે છે. એટલે તમે જે PPE કીટ પહેરેલી છે એ આ ટેક્સટાઇલ મેન્યુફેક્ચરની હોવી જોઈએ. એક વાત, એની ડિઝાઇન છે, એના કમ્પોનન્ટ છે, એ સેન્ટ્રલ હેલ્થ મિનિસ્ટ્રીએ નક્કી કરેલા છે WHOની ગાઈડલાઇન પ્રમાણે. એમાં હેડ હુડ, શિલ્ડ, ફેસ શિલ્ડ ઓર ગ્લાસ, N95 માસ્ક ઓર ટ્રિપલ લેયર માસ્ક, કમ્પ્લીટ હેડ ટુ ટો ગાઉન હોવું ફરજિયાત છે. અને હેડ ટુ ટો ગાઉન છે તે હેલ્થકેર ગુડ, જેને SSMMS ગ્રેડનું હેલ્થકેર ગુડ કહેવામાં આવે છે, એનું બનેલું હોવું જોઈએ. આ હેલ્થકેર ગુડ મટીરિયલ હશે અને સેન્ટ્રલ ટેક્સટાઇલ મિનિસ્ટ્રીની ટેસ્ટ પાસ કરેલી ટેક્સટાઇલ ઇન્ડસ્ટ્રીઝમાંથી તમે પીપીઈ કીટ પહેરેલી હશે તો તમે તમારી જાતને સેફ રાખી શકશો. બાકી સુડો ફિલિંગ ઓફ સેફટી આવે છે. અત્યારના માર્કેટમાં ખૂબ જ પીપીઈ કીટના નામે એસએસ મટીરિયલનું ટેક્સટાઇલ મટીરિયલ માર્કેટ થાય છે, લે છે ડૉક્ટરો. એટલે બધાને વિનંતી છે, ઇન્ડિયન મેડિકલ એસોસિએશન રાજકોટે HSSMMS નોન વોવન પોલીપ્રોપાઇલિન સેન્ટ્રલ ટેક્સટાઇલ મિનિસ્ટ્રી એફિલિએટેડ લેબનું ટેસ્ટ કરેલી ટેક્સટાઇલ મેન્યુફેક્ચરિંગ કંપનીમાંથી જ પીપીઈ કીટ બનાવી અને ડૉક્ટરોને સપ્લાય કરેલી છે. થેન્ક યુ.
Thank you, Dr. Tejas Karamta, sir. Dr. Chetan Lal Setha, sir, would like to highlight the issues about PPE, and I would also like to know from him whether we can reuse the PPE or not.
Two things I would like to differentiate. The SS material and SMMS material. What does this SM stand for? This S stands for spun bound, M stands for melt blown. So whatever the routine non-woven material is there, that is SS material, it comes in various GSMs. GSM is just the thickness. So for medical grade, it has to be spun bound layer followed by melt blown layer, again covered by spun bound. So that is what we mean by SSMMS. So that is a 5 layer. While SS material is a 2 layer fabric, it is non-alcohol repellent, non-water repellent, and non-chemical repellent. While SSMMS is free for bacteria, for virus, and at the same time it is alcohol repellent with high hydrophobicity. Regarding the reuse of this, it depends on how it is used. If you are using in a high risk area, ideally it is disposable. So you should throw it as a biomedical waste. But if you are if you are using it in a relatively low risk area and looking to the external quality, if it is non-stained with blood or any other liquid, then you can autoclave it.
Yes, it was something about the N95 mask. What we wanted to highlight is that N95 masks, as the guidelines are coming from all India medical institutions also, that we can always use it after 4th or 5th day. So that was the message which I wanted to convey. Because of the lack of the transmission, we could not do it in the right way. From Dr. Sejul Antala, sir, I would like to highlight an important point. Antala, sir, I wanted to know from you, can dead bodies spread the infections?
Dead bodies can spread the infection because they might be contaminated with the droplets from the nasopharyngeal or nasal secretion. So all the suspected dead bodies or COVID positive patients' dead bodies should be handled according to the dead body guidelines. We have to put it into the Ziploc bag and then only hand over to the relatives, and does not allow the dead body to take home. Preferably it should go directly to the mortuary, and just allow the relatives to just open the Ziploc and they can just visualize the face of the dead body, but does not allow any relatives to touch the dead body because it might be a potential source of the infection for their relatives. So by this way, by direct contact, only dead body can transmit the infection.
So thank you, sir. Per se, dead body doesn't have viremia, so the dead body cannot transmit, but we need to take the proper care for handling of the dead bodies, and the message to the society should be that the proper care is being taken care of, and while we are taking the dead bodies to the mortuary and all, you need not to worry much. At least respect should be given and the proper precautions are being taken care of. A very important question which was partly highlighted by Dr. Jayesh Dobaria, but I would request Dr. Hiren Kothari sir to throw some highlights, whether it is okay to use air conditioners. See, it's an hot summer and again COVID-19 is in full mood. So Dr. Hiren Kothari sir.
Just I would like to know that air condition is the essential part of operation theater because we are working in an already hot environment with lot of PPEs on. On top of it, when you are operating a patient suspecting a COVID and still operating, you need to have a negative pressure in the operation theater. There is no choice about it. But at the same time, there is one thing one has to keep it in mind. by doing that, you are exposing the patient to some kind of infection. So you have to make a diligent judgment that whether this kind of operation theater environment will help patient in getting out of his surgical problems, and at the same time not adding a further problems or complications in form of infection. So of course positive pressure is to be absolutely avoided for the surgical theater, but at the same time we have to keep this thing with a pinch of salt, that this negative pressure inside the operation theater can create a problem. So make a wise decision. So just to repeat, I will just ask a single question to myself before embarking upon any surgery, whether this surgery will help patient in saving his life or not.
So thank you, Hiren Kothari sir. I would like to have Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir also to throw some highlight on the same issue.
As our Honorable Health Secretary told few days back, to restrict the use of air conditioners in this era. Even in China, in one restaurant, because of central air conditioners, about more than 20 people were affected. But we have to consider our situation also. Central Clinical Infectious Disease Society of India has recommended that if there are window or split ACs in a consulting room, they are slightly okay, because virus particles are slightly heavy. After coughing or sneezing, they immediately fall on the surface and do not circulate in the atmosphere or in the room. So it is okay to use AC in the consulting room or in the waiting room. However, it is not a strong recommendation because we have a limited data. Most of our hospitals in India and across the world, they are centrally air conditioned. So European Society has already formed guidelines how to use central air conditioning system. And government of Delhi High Court has asked government of India to give guidelines to use central air conditioners and air conditioners in India by May 1. So we have to wait of those guidelines whether to use AC or not and how to use. Because putting exhaust fan, keeping fans open, keeping windows open, there are some solutions, but we do not have an exact idea. So we should wait till the exact guidelines come from the government or the authorities. Till then, we should use the air conditioners judiciously, depending upon our own choice and wisdom.
Thank you, Bhatt sir and Hiren Kothari sir. Now I would like to have some important question from, and I would request Dr. Jay Dirwani sir to answer that whether vaccine will help and what is the earliest possible time the vaccine will be available in world and in India. Over to Dr. Jay Dirwani sir.
There are at least 70 different vaccine manufacturers lined up for the vaccine trials. And many of these vaccine trials have already started. China has already started its third vaccine trial yesterday. Previous two vaccines have failed. Similarly, in Germany, in UK, in USA, the vaccine trials have already started. But still, there are no encouraging news from any front. So, earliest, if possible, not less than 6 months, but most probably not before 1 year from now, we are going to have a vaccine for corona. And even if we have a successful vaccine of corona 1 year from now, there are going to be a lot of logistic issues. Because for most of the other vaccines, we have age-specific or community-specific requirements. But for this corona vaccine, every human being on this planet is a candidate for vaccine. So there are going to be a lot of logistic issues. I mean, producing 80 billion doses of vaccine and administering them to each and every person is going to be a huge and mammoth task. So at present, we don't rely on the vaccine or availability of the vaccine. We'll have to fight out with the other measures. And yesterday only, this study has come from China again. I don't know how much to rely on that study, but they have said that the virus has mutated into 30 different strains in just 6 months. So the virus which mutates into so many strains, it's almost difficult or almost impossible to find out a vaccine or a cure for the disease. So if that is true, we are bound to have a doomsday very near. Thank you.
So thank you, sir. Till now, what we were knowing is that there are no different strains of virus in different parts of the world, but still it's controversial. Maybe we'll, if we get time, we'll throw highlight on it. But now I would like to open one Pandora's box. Probably many surgeons, many gynecologists in their homes are waiting for these questions. I've got almost 25 questions related to the same is regarding the preoperative COVID-19 testing in the preoperative patients. I would like to have the word from Dr. Hiren Kothari sir from the surgical point of surgeon's perspective. Over to Dr. Hiren Kothari sir.
As our learned microbiologist, Dr. Sejul has mentioned, that RT-PCR test is the gold standard for COVID-19. But we just need to know one thing, that there are chances of getting a false negative report. I hope everybody will agree with that. Because in the early stage, there can be less viral load, improper swab taking, transportation of the sample, and at the same time, these reasons does not make you immune and proof that patient is not having COVID. So by doing COVID and getting negative does not mean that the patient is negative, because by doing a surgical procedure, you are exposing the patient's immunity in such a low level that a subtle level of less virulence load can also increase or flare up post-operatively. So just negative reports does not give you a permission to operate the patients. So just take it with that way. Okay, even if a patient is negative and if the surgery is inevitable, consider and treat that patient as COVID positive and do it as if you are operating on a COVID positive patient. That is how you will save yourself, your other fellow health professional, and at the same time, patients and the relative who are under false impression that the COVID test is negative, so they should not be worried. So I make it a very clear stand that even if we start doing surgeries on a COVID negative patient, just think of window period and there few limitations of this COVID test. Take all the patients with due risk regarding the benefit of the patient.
So thank you, Hiren Kothari sir. Now I would like to have a word from Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir, his views, and he can talk about the false sense of security also, and what are other things we should do in pre-operative period also. Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir.
Ideally, if you want to test pre-operatively, we should do COVID-19 PCR plus antibody test. If PCR is positive and antibodies are negative, don't do surgery. If PCR is negative and antibodies are positive, do surgery and there is no need of repeat the test. If PCR is negative and antibodies are also negative, then you can do surgery, but there is always a risk of patient becoming positive later. So this we have to think. Another thing is that if these tests are supplemented with CT scan of chest, the sensitivity increases further. But in a resource limited setting like us, doing these all investigations will be more than the cost of surgery also. So we have to be very careful, and as Dr. Hiren said, we have to operate all patients considering that he or she is COVID positive.
So thank you sir. Now I would like to have the word from Dr. Jai Dirwani sir. I would request him to sum up these issues, whether necessary or not, whether workable or not. Over to Dr. Jai Dirwani sir.
Well, I share the concerns of our surgeon friends that to know the COVID status pre-operatively is very important for them. But then it doesn't look like a practical solution to all the surgeries. Because as said by Dr. Hiren Kothari and Sanjay, that preoperative COVID testing may not be as much helpful, because if the patient is in window period and if the patient tests positive after the surgery, then there are all chances, looking at the scenario going on in the society, that the patient may sue us. So it's always better to treat or operate the surgeon considering, operate the patient considering that every patient has a COVID suspect only. And may not be a workable solution also for all the patients to do the COVID testing pre-operatively.
Yes, but the concerns are rightly addressed by Indian Medical Association Rajkot. Time and again, we are always in contact with the authorities to deal this issue in the best possible way. Be assured, we are always with you. Now, I would like to have a word from Dr. Chetan Lalseta, sir. There are lots of questions about this. Sir, which are the best sanitizers, one, and how to disinfect the surfaces? Over to Dr. Chetan Lalseta, sir.
In a very small time, the whole world has shifted from handshaking to hand sanitizing. And it is very important to understand that what type of hand sanitizers are effective. basically there are two types of hand sanitizer, alcohol based and non-alcohol based. For corona or for COVID, only alcohol based sanitizers are advisable. Non-alcohol based sanitizers are not effective. So first and foremost thing, sanitizer should be alcohol based. Second thing is concentration and type of alcohol. So for COVID, the concentration of alcohol should be more than 70%. So there are three preparations. One may contain ethanol, isopropyl alcohol, or N-propanol. Out of these three only are effective for this COVID. Second thing is contact time. So for any hand sanitizer, you have to follow the hand hygiene, 6 steps of hand hygiene that are necessary. And for alcohol-based sanitizer, your contact time should be minimum 20 to 30 seconds. And this should be followed frequently throughout the day, within OPD, within operative area, or even in routine practice also. Second thing about the disinfection. Hand sanitizer are for the people. For disinfection of the area, whether in OPD or IPD, we have to use sodium hypochlorite. So 1% sodium hypochlorite solution for all surfaces, all non-metal surfaces. For metal surfaces, you have to use alcohol-based spray. Or for other surfaces like keyboard, mobiles, or which are of regular contact, alcohol sprays should be used. For floor cleaning, you have to use soap and you have to go for 3-layer technique of clearing the infection. First, wash the area with soap and water, allow it to dry, and then use 1% sodium hypochlorite. Again, the cleaning should be from interior to the outer side towards the door side. And this practice of cleaning ideally should be performed every 4 to 6 hours. Ask the staff, patient to have minimum contact with the surfaces, especially the railings, the metal surfaces, because this virus live for a longer time on these metal surfaces.
From Chetan Lalseta sir, I would like to know one important point, that whether washing clothes from going from hospital to the home, how do you disinfect the newspapers, currency notes, vegetables? I don't know the answer. Chetan Lalseta sir, if you can throw some highlight.
Few things are necessary, few things are on the contrary, seems like over-exaggerating also. Washing the clothes is mandatory because you are in a direct contact with the clothes for a longer time. Now so you can immediately keep them in a hot water, so it will help. You can use sodium hypochlorite 0.1% for that also. Now regarding the currencies, newspapers, I don't think it serves so much of purpose, and rather it will keep you occupied throughout the day in whole of the sanitization process. So one need to be cautious. If you are touching those areas, just hand sanitization is important rather than sanitizing the all objects.
Thank you, sir. I would like to add one line. सरहद पे जो वर्दी खाकी थी, आज उसका रंग सफेद हुआ. And we as an IMA Rajkot team are so proud of our leaders like Dr. Chetan Lalseta sir, Jai Dirwani sir, Tejas Karamta, Rukesh Godasra, Atul Pandya sir, and Hiren Kothari sir, who have always led us from the front and made us proud all throughout. So this was something about the different parts which we would like to add, the controversies and all. One question which I would like to address from Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir, though he is not a surgeon, but sir, can you tell us what would be the ideal time to start the planned surgeries?
According to guidelines, again, the expert advice, surgery should be deferred to at least for 3 months from now, non-planned elective surgeries. I know it's a long period, but we have to see the risk and benefit ratio for the patient, for the doctor, risk of COVID infection. So suggestions and expert opinion till date, it is to avoid elective surgeries for next 3 months or till the epidemic ends. This is the only way forward, and this is all we are supposed to do.
So this was the question from Dr. Bhavesh Sachde and Dr. Jayesh Wagadia sir also. Now a question to Dr. Jai Dirwani sir. Sir, is there any specific treatment when you are seeing a neonatal patient who is COVID-19 positive?
There's no different treatment actually, no different treatment guidelines for neonates or the pediatric patients. We have to follow the ICMR guidelines which are available for all patients.
So thank you. From Dr. Hiren Kothari sir, I would like to know, as he has already discussed, but Dr. Nitin Lal sir is concerned whether it is necessary to do COVID test in all the patients posted for LSCS.
As already mentioned previously, there is no specific confirm positive report will save you or negative report will save you from patient getting infection even post-operatively. So just use your judicious decision whether your surgery is going to help the patient in getting his current problem. Maybe emergency trauma surgery or maybe a LSCS. You just have to use a discretion that this patient cannot be better without this LSCS or any kind of surgery which can save his or her limb or life. Otherwise, treat them with due precautions that are required to save yourself and the patient.
So we have a question from our ENT panel, Dr. Bharat Kakadia sir and even Dr. Pratap Jethwani sir. I would request Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir to answer that. That fever with tonsillar enlargement and a white spot over the tonsil, is it a feature of COVID?
No. Tonsillitis, tonsillar enlargement or tonsillar infection is not common in COVID infection. Most probably it is because of a bacterial infection. So it is less likely to be COVID. And to add to Dr. Hiren Kothari's statement, lower segment cesarean section is relatively low risk surgery for COVID because there is no general anesthesia given, there is no intubation, there is no oxygen requirement, there is less likely chances of aerosol generation. Still, we have to be careful, but as compared to other surgeries like ENT surgeries, sphenoid surgeries, anesthetics are all more at risk. LSCS is comparatively less risky surgery as compared to other surgeries.
Thank you. There were a lot of questions altogether. We would like to highlight here that we have tried our best to sum up this issue, but at the end, we need to know one simple thing. It's a new baby. Guidelines can always help us, but at the end, our own wisdom should prevail, and we should do the best for ourselves and for the society using our wisdom, keeping in mind the guidelines, and considering the fact that this is a new baby in the book as of now. I would like to have a word from Dr. Jai Dirwani, IMA President, as a part of summing up of what he has thought, what he has learned in this lecture for next 5 minutes. I request Dr. Jai Dirwani sir to sum up today's webinar.
Thank you, Paras. Thank you for wonderful handling of the panel discussion. For all those who have tuned in late, here's a summary of the whole panel discussion. It's a new virus, and every human being is susceptible host to the virus, and it started from November 19, 2019 in China, and hence it is named as SARS-CoV-19. Cases and rate of rise of new cases is less compared in India is less compared to Western world, and mortality reported in India is also low as compared to Western world. Fever, sore throat, severe myalgia, cough, breathlessness, unexplained hypoxemia, diarrhea, these are all the major symptoms of COVID-19. And in investigation part, neutropenia, lymphopenia, particularly the ratio of neutropenia to neutrophils to lymphocytes more than 3.5 or progressive lymphopenia are the signs, the symptoms suggest, investigation suggestive of COVID. Anosmia or the loss of taste and smell sensation is quite common and you can say quite specific to the COVID-19. In the disease, 80% of the patients are either asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic, and about 15% only require the hospitalization, 5% only require the ICU admission, and half of them may not survive the disease. Role of HCQ and azithromycin in the treatment is still debatable, may or may not be given. There's some role of zinc and vitamin C to improve the immunity to fight against COVID. The closed circuit nebulization and other procedures should be done, and there should be no strict no to the aerosol generating procedures. There are certain new therapies on the horizon, and let us hope they turn useful. The role of steroids is again controversial. HCQ prophylaxis is to be given only in the exceptional situations and has to be taken with a pinch of salt. N95 mask, double gloves, preferably double gloves. Eye gear is preferable in triage areas and screening OPDs. IPD and ICU precautions are very much well known to all those who need to know this, so we will not go into the details. The separate dedicated OT till pandemic is required, and strictly we have to again avoid the aerosol generating procedures like cautery. No surgery without complete PPE to each and every person in OT. RT-PCR is the most reliable and gold standard in for the diagnosis. Is highly specific, though sensitivity may not be as high. Rapid antibody testing is useful only after 7 days, and it's mainly useful in the surveillance in the hotspot areas, but still the detailed ICMR guidelines are awaited for the use of rapid antibody testing. We have to learn many things from the other countries, like the extensive testing or mask for everyone, social distancing, hand sanitization, cough etiquettes, etc. For the reporting of the patient, we have to trace, we have to test, and we have to track to the patients. Heat may not have much role in prevention of transmission. PPE kits supplied by Rajkot are only government qualified. Dead bodies might spread the infection. Vaccine is not yet available, at least for 6 months. COVID testing, preoperative, though desirable, may not be a workable solution. Hand sanitizer should be alcohol-based only with 70% minimum requirement, and 20 to 30 seconds should be the minimum contact time. And 1% sodium hypochlorite for the surface disinfection, and frequent disinfection every 4 to 6 hours. Thank you so very much. I'll invite Rukesh for the thank-giving procedure.
Good afternoon all. Thank you all Rajkot IMA members for attending this COVID-19 webinar. I hope you all will enjoy it. As you all know, this is our first webinar, and in future there might be more required due to this lockdown or further COVID situation. So any improvement, all of your suggestion will be required. You can send your suggestion to any of our committee members. I would like to also thank our expert panelists, as well as ever happy to help IMA Rajkot, Dr. Atul Pandya sir, Dr. Hiren Kothari sir, Dr. Sanjay Bhatt sir, Chetan bhai, Mayank bhai, Jayesh bhai, Tejas, Sejul, Akash, and our own president Dirwani sir, and not to forget ever charming and my dear friend Paras for wonderfully handling and moderating this COVID webinar. I would like to also thank Dr. Hetal Vadera for questioning and managing all this online stuff. I would like to thank HCG Hospital and all who involved in this webinar. Thank you all. Jai IMA, Jai Hind.